Hello and welcome to this episode of Teppou Republic. Last time we saw the first battle of the Sioux forces going up against the Hakone clan in southern Umi. We used our matchlock militants in a phased advance technique to gradually defeat their army, leaving only the castle at Umi to overcome. So our main force went to besiege the castle and then went into the assault, overcoming the enemy's artillery and redoubts manned with gunners to eventually capture the castle despite moderate casualties. Once Umi was captured, the Obama clan to the north declared war and were about to see if they'll make any moves. I was here before, many years ago. I visited this spot with the Hakone family. To look at it after what has happened, it brings a regretful sickness to my chest. But what can I do? Pushing ideals onto others is what father does best, and so I have happily ordered men to spill the blood of my own friends. I cannot stay in Umi. Every familiar view of this land reminds me of the past, when father would keep his dreams to himself. I have requested a new command, to march against the Sayama in aid of the Takatori. If I can aid at least one of my friends' families in this growing chaos, then I shall have a chance of stepping out of father's cold shadow. I shall live with honour whether he wants me to or not. So welcome back to Teppou Republic. At the end of the last episode, we were considering going to fight the Sayama clan on behalf of our allies, the Takatori, to the south. But to be able to do that, we need to be secure in our current holdings of Iga and Umi. The main threat is the Obama clan, who have declared war on us. They are currently stationed north of us. I can see with my ninja that they have a half stack hanging around in Echizen. It's at least 2 or 3 turns march away from Umi, so even if it does choose to attack me now, I do have some time which will allow me to move away from Umi province and move back if I need to, if the Obama move. Before I can go towards the Sayama lands, I need to get an agreement with the Yodo clan, who control Kyoto, for military access. I have to offer them more access than I'm asking for to get them to agree to it, because their clan supports the shogunate, so they are in general disaligned with me and don't really want to deal with me, but I'm able to convince them, so we've got the military access, which is good news. I'm also getting a military alliance with the clan to my east who currently control Mino. This will mean that Umi province is more secure while I'm away, and hopefully if the Obama do attack, there's a chance these guys can be convinced to fight with the Obama and help me out. So with the arrangements complete, I'm moving the main force led by General Takayuki right towards the Sayama army currently in the northern area of Yamato province. I'm planning to back them up with some militants I'm going to move out of Iga province. But then I check Umi here and you can see that the public order is descending rapidly. This is because the province is still very much a shogunate province who really need to be repressed in order to remain stable while I'm converting them to the imperial cause. So I'm going to start recruiting forces there, and I send forces from Iga to garrison the area. The Obama clan do indeed move on Umi, their forces just crossing the border, still perhaps 2 turns away from reaching the castle, but interesting at least. The tiny Sayama army beats back the Takatori's even tinier force. So now, both of those clans must have their forces pretty much expended, so the situation there is even more delicate and exploitable. The Obama army has lots of generals in it. It also has some pretty substantial melee components using Shogitai, who are an elite melee unit. They also have Shogunate loyalists, a light infantry unit with long range that can outrange anything I can field. So an interesting little army there. I decide that the best tactic is to split my force. Takahisa is going to lead a strike team down towards Kawachi to eliminate the Sayama forces and hopefully attack Kawachi as well. And I'm going to be reinforcing him from Iga province. This will allow Takayuki to go back to Umi and guard the province and reinforce from Umi itself. So now I'm going to have two battlefronts going on simultaneously. Takahisa already has pushed the Sayama forces south, so he is now free to attack Kawachi, which has no garrison. It does have its garrison forces from the buildings there, so I will still have to overcome some enemy forces to take it, which means at the moment I'm actually not strong enough to take it. I do need to reinforce from Iga a little bit before I can actually capture the area. So in Umi, I'm getting all the guys I can inside the castle to improve public order. Next turn I'll be able to get everyone else inside. I'm going to leave Takayuki outside because that will mean he replenishes some of the troops that couldn't make it to the castle. As the end turn sequence goes, the Obama do approach the castle a little bit closer. Still not close enough to be a massive threat, so I've still got time. Now the Sayama have recruited more men who are now stationed outside the castle at Kawachi. I'm linking my army up with a little bit of reinforcements. I march on Kawachi, the enemy fall back into their castle, so they now have some cannons and levy infantry in the castle, plus all of their garrison units. I wanted to have a little spy on what buildings they had so I could guess what garrison units they have. Most of their garrison are going to be artillery units because they have an artillery-based build going on there in Kawachi. So for now, I'm going to fall back and try and get some more forces together before I go into the attack. The other thing I want to potentially wait for is for the Takatori to build up forces and aid me in the attack. So now going into the next turn, the Obama army is delayed because it waits for an agent to catch up with it. As a result, it can't reach Umi this turn, but it does get very close, so a battle there is now imminent. Now diplomatically, we are now being dragged into some wars because of my alliance with the guys in Mino. They're being attacked by some clans that I don't know, and I don't even know what direction they're being attacked, so I'm going to agree to enter war with them just because it's going to prevent me from getting any dishonour for disobeying the alliance. So here's that Obama army I need to worry about. It's now right next to the castle. You can see inside the castle my standing army is of approximately equal size by the looks of things. Much more traditional than the Obama force, but still should be more than enough to deal hefty damage to them if I want to. Now down at the Yamato-Kawachi border, I can see the Sayama have deployed their forces into the field again. I'm worried they're going to attempt to link them up with this general here, so I thought I'm probably going to try and eliminate this general, because that will also mean that Takahisa gets some battle experience and gets closer to leveling up, so that'll help him take the castle if he has more experience. So we're going to eliminate this small army. It has two generals in it and some Yarikachi, so some pretty powerful units that we're going to wipe out. My forces can regenerate whilst they're in my allied territory, so it doesn't matter that I'm losing troops in these minor engagements, I'll be getting them back during the end turn sequence. So now I have a pretty good advantage over the remaining Sayama forces, and I'm going to back my guys up with even more troops from Iga province. However, that plan failed because I've actually lost my military access to the Yodo lands. Despicable. Proof that honour is indeed just a word in this modern age. The quartermaster of my son's army had written to say that he's being refused entry to Kyoto's fiefdom on the grounds that they no longer wish to continue our military transport deals. And yet they still pretend to be offended when I suggest to them that their own agents should, by the same token, be denied from eastward passage on our roads. The Yodo push their luck, relying too much on the power of a ghostly shogun to justify their arrogance. And yet with the Imperial Palace in their possession, we cannot risk a brash move lightly. So I eventually managed to find the message telling me that military access definitely had been cancelled. The first thing I tried to do was actually just get it back, but they refused, so that's not going to happen. Now in Umi, I now have access to recruit some artillery units. I'm going to recruit some mortars. Those will be particularly useful for defending the castle in an assault because they can fire up over the walls and at any attackers who are advancing. So with everything dealt with for this turn, we're going to advance into the next one. Let's see what the Obama army does. It looks like they're going to attack our lead mine, but they don't attack the castle. That means they don't believe they have the strength to overcome my army. Interesting. Now I'm being dragged into another war through my alliances, probably not a war that's going to affect me in any way for the moment, so I'm going to focus on the wars I have for now. So Takahisa is going to attack the Sayama forces. We can see they're just falling straight back into their castle. So Kawachi itself is now undefended by armies, but it still has a sizable garrison force spawning from its buildings, so I was worried that going into the attack now would be a bad idea. What I wanted to do was resolve the situation with the Obama force, and if that went well, I might feel more willing to take risks with sending Takahisa into any kind of siege or attack at Kawachi. So I'm getting some forces together to just attack the Obama army. It's a fairly balanced battle, as you can see, so I'm just going to risk everything in Umi province in one battle with our daimyo Takayuki leading the men, hopefully to a victory that will be decisive enough to allow us to defend against any future attacks the Obama might make. So let's head down to the battlefield. Now this is the same battlefield that we fought on when actually capturing Umi province from the Hakone clan. This time I possess the forested hill on the north side of the map. I have all my troops hidden there to begin with. However, my general is not allowed to be hidden, and he is taking fire from the enemy's artillery straight away. I'm right on the edge of the enemy's artillery range, so I decided that if I actually move back with my general, the artillery will stop firing, whilst my main army can move forward while still hidden in the forest without drawing their fire. You can see the artillery is positioned right in front of their army, so they've got it right out in a dangerous position actually. Now this was something I was watching quite closely because I thought there's a chance that I can rush them and destroy their artillery with my cavalry, and then make it safe for my infantry to break from the tree cover and rush towards the enemy's main army. So my army is going to advance through, hidden in the forest. At the same time I have these reinforcements who are covered behind this big mountain range. I can also send these guys in a southward direction, and they're going to come down from this big hill to attack the enemy's flank. This huge wall of mountains is protecting them from enemy artillery fire as well, so even if the enemy can see them, they can't really fire at them at this stage, so that's good news. So my guys are just edging forwards. They're not going to take any artillery fire for now, which is good news. But once they get to the edge of that tree line, there's a big open plain they're going to have to get across if they want to get near to the enemy's ranks. The enemy have the defensive advantage, so they have no reason to attack me in my superior position. I'm going to have to attack them. So I'm going to attempt my cavalry plan. My cavalry race forward across the open plains straight towards the enemy's artillery. The artillery fires, it's inaccurate and firing at a moving target, but they do manage to deal some casualties to us. However, as I get close, I notice that the enemy spear units are now rushing forward to meet my cavalry advance, and those spears are going to be able to screen the enemy's artillery from my attack. So I'm forced to turn back. There's too many enemy spears to attempt to dodge around them at this stage. The good news is that it means the enemy's front line has been drawn in front of its artillery, in fact right on top of it, which means the artillery's line of sight is going to be partially blocked by its own troops. That's going to reduce their accuracy and means some of the guns probably can't fire all the time. So my cavalry are racing back to my lines. Luckily, we only lost about 6 or 7 men between both regiments, so it wasn't a devastating skirmish. But at least we've discovered that plan doesn't work, which means I now have no choice but to commit to a general advance across the open plain and simply receive the enemy's artillery fire. I don't want to run across the plain because these low-grade troops don't have the training or fitness to properly sprint and then go straight into fighting, so I want them to advance at a walk. Luckily, as I do so, I don't take too many casualties, and the enemy's main army actually falls back to a position quite far behind its artillery. Here we can see the Shogun, the elite melee infantry, who if they engage in melee will rip through all of my troops, so I want to try and take them out with missile units if I can. Now I'm very happy to see the enemy's artillery being so isolated from their main force, because this means I can rush up my matchlock militants into range and start taking shots at them, killing off the artillery crew without having to deal with any return fire from the actual main body of the enemy's army. So I'm doing exactly that. All of my militants are rushing up, getting into position and firing at the enemy's artillery, still taking casualties themselves, but not too bad. They have quite a strong numerical advantage, so a massive blast of fire kills half the crew and the rest of them simply retreat, realizing that is a pretty dangerous situation to be in. So the cannons are abandoned, the enemy's artillery advantage has now been negated. Now, the advantage I have in this battle is ranged. I have more missile units than they do, or even though mine are of inferior quality. Luckily, the enemy have put all of the melee units on their front line, which gives me a nice advantage because I can now start picking them off with my mass matchlock fire. Unfortunately, we're right on the edge of the effective range and my guys are super inaccurate, so I'm barely hitting any of them. I'm pretty much just blasting through all my ammunition, killing 1 or 2 of the enemies just to soften them up a bit. I decided I need to do at least a couple of phased advances to make this tactic really effective, so I eventually decided to rush forwards and then continue firing from a position where I'll be more accurate. I've come into range of the enemy's levy infantry, but I'm not worried, they're going to be missing me at this range as well, so that's not too bad. I'm smashing shots into these Yarikachi, who are a high value target. Their armour will have almost no effect against those matchlock shots, so they're a nice target to eliminate with missile fire while I can. The enemy's levies are firing back, but you can see from the little rays on the ground in front of them, they barely have line of sight on any of my men, and the guys they're trying to fire at, they barely have line of sight on at all. It would be better for them to be firing to the guys towards their right, but they are not doing so I wasn't worried about that little engagement. Now suddenly some of the enemy's spear levy decide to charge my line. A very courageous decision. So now all of my matchlock militants are going to be firing as fast as they can to attempt to demoralise and kill these men before they reach my lines. I do have my own spear levy, so it's not such a big problem. It's not life or death for these matchlock militants to kill all of these spear levy. But the levy themselves don't have enough morale to actually charge all the way, so they go about 3/4 of the way before they just turn back. They didn't take all that many losses, but it was the simple morale shock of being under constant matchlock fire that turned them around. I think they will return from routing quite soon and have another go. The enemy's Yarikachi have routed completely and are rushing off the field. Excellent news. Now the enemy's Shogun are starting to take some glancing blows at long range. The enemy's Shogun loyalists are now trying to engage with my matchlock militants. These guys are long range, more accurate than my levied troops and my Ashigaru troops effectively. But still, they're not proper infantry, so they're not going to be doing devastating damage. They're basically a very low level light infantry unit, but slightly superior to my militants. Meanwhile, those spear levy have come back from routing and are attacking again as I suggested. Luckily, I managed to countercharge them with my own spear levy at exactly the perfect time to avoid my matchlock militants taking the brunt of their spear charge. So the enemy rout, the other unit that was backing them up routs as well once they do. They've also taken quite heavy casualties from gunfire. All of us put a great trust in our leaders. As for the officers on the ground, there is very little information on which to make a judgment. Vision of the enemy is literally clouded after the first exchange of fire. Only the further flashes of their weapons reveal the angle at which to make further volleys. The sound of enemy voices or movement is beyond hearing. An enemy charge might appear 10 paces from you, emerging from the smoke of your last shot, bloodied from the rush through a hail of missiles. Then you look at their eyes. If they show fear, you keep firing. If not, you flee. So with the front lines engaged in missile combat, it's time for me to start working on the flanks. I've got my cavalry attacking the enemy's levy infantry here on the back right corner of their formation. They'll be doing okay because the enemy's infantry are getting demoralised by this turning situation. My spear levy are attacking one of the enemy's generals in the flank. The enemy horsemen are going to lose men quite quickly against these spear levy. They're also getting closed on from the front as well, so as they turn to engage my men, they'll be attacked in their other flank. So my spear levy rush forward. The enemy's Shogun loyalists are now being engaged in melee by my spear levy. Actually, an even match, but we do have the numerical advantage there. My Yariki are now fighting with the enemy's general here at the back. We've in fact just killed the enemy general, so that's going to be ruining their morale. Here you can see the enemy's artillery crew and Shogunate loyalists are fighting on against my spear levy. The spear levy aren't all that able to defeat these guys in melee because they're actually quite good, but luckily I do have my matchlocks firing in when gaps appear in the lines and taking out extra enemies, so the fight is turning in my favour. Here the enemy's Shogatai, the elite melee infantry, are absolutely cutting through my men. They're just slaughtering my spear levy. You can see the bodies of my men all over the ground. The only way I can defeat them is to just overwhelm them, so I'm pushing all my cavalry into melee, and the enemy retreat at that point. They had one extra unit right out on their flank who my matchlocks are firing at. I also attacked them with spear levy and cavalry. They were a unit who came back from routing and then sat on the hill pestering me with their gunfire. So overall, we have won a nice decisive victory for the forces of Su. The Obama force has been all but destroyed, so now Umi is pretty safe, and General Takayuki has got himself some more battle experience. Here in the battle results, you can see we lost about 600 men, the enemy losing well over 1,000. We also captured some of their cannons to add to our own force, which is good news. Our forces are going to be quite easily replenished because most of our losses were amongst levied or militant units, so it'll be easier to get back. A few enemy survivors have snuck down into Iga province. I didn't really want to chase them. I wanted to go back into Umi Castle to keep the public order high, unfortunately. So now we're going to shift focus to see what Takahisa can do here in Kawachi. We can see they've got their standing army full of wooden cannons, and they have their garrison force, which I suspect has more wooden cannons because of the cannon range in the province. So I'm going to go into a siege, not an assault, because the balance of power isn't massively in my favour, and I didn't want to get this army annihilated. And the other point to consider is that I'm not really in any rush. I can simply hold out and attempt to starve the enemy out. If they don't sally out against me, I can take this fortress without any losses, which is quite suitable for me. And since it's not a very valuable province, there's no rush to take it right away, so that's okay. Now in the end turn sequence, the Obama are going on the offensive against my agriculture in Umi, which is bad news. They've done a little bit of damage to it with their survivors. They are now nearer the castle, so I can go and wipe them out. But it means that this turn I'm going to have reduced income from Umi, which is really inconvenient actually. Luckily they didn't damage it too much because their force isn't big enough. Now towards the end of the end turn sequence, the Sayama do indeed sally out against Takahisa's forces. They have lots of cannons in their ranks as I suspected, but I wasn't too worried because when they're sallying, their cannons are going to have to be left behind. So the majority of those cannons are not going to have a big impact on the battle. Let's go down and see the battlefield itself. You can see it's completely covered in mist, which means both sides' units are hidden from each other. All I can see is their general coming towards me in the distance, coming over this little ridge. I know that since the general is coming from that area, that was their deployment zone, and their wooden cannons are somewhere in there. They're in a mobile unit, so I know they're just going to be waiting for me whilst the rest of their forces advance to face my defensive position. You can see I put my missile units in front and melee ones behind, with Takahisa himself sitting with the cavalry right at the back. But I also have, out on my extreme left flank, these Yariki who are going around to sit in a forested hill just to the left side of my formation. They're going to be supporting my Kisho ninjas who are also hanging out here. The idea will be to simply draw the enemy towards my main group sitting on the hillside nearby, and then rush down this hill to attack them from the flank or from behind. So let's have a look at the enemy's force. You can see they've deployed in a fairly long line with all of their missile units constituting the front rank of their army. Here you can see they have garrison infantry, the most powerful unit in the enemy's army, an actual proper line infantry unit who will beat my guys in a gunfight. They also have a single unit of spear levy on their left, which is good for me because that's going to be the side my cavalry isn't attacking, so they're not going to be bogged down in enemy spears. They do have these fire rockets who potentially are a worry for me. They can bombard me from long range if they choose to, however, I don't think they're going to choose to. Both you and your father have my sincere thanks. It is good to know that our past friendship counts for more than words in this troubled time. I know that you now face the brunt of our enemy's wrath, and for this we cannot repay you. The least we can offer is stewardship of the Kawachi fiefdom when the dust has settled. Take heart that we will not shy from this battle either. If you can hold out against their attacks, our reserve forces shall arrive to secure the province in your name. Together the arrogant Sayama shall be ended, and we shall be one step closer to freeing the hand of the Emperor. So now the enemy forces are a little closer. They're breaking into a run as their advance continues. They're just about to pass my flanking position, so it looks like my plan to let them go past and attack them from behind is going to work, with the exception of their second-in-command general, who is currently coming up the hill towards my guys. It appears they were planning to use him to go around the left flank of my army. Now this actually turned out to be a very good twist, because it means that my cavalry are going to be able to attack that isolated general and destroy him. General units are weak against cavalry, as I've mentioned before. Plus I'm going to get this downhill charge on them and a morale shock bonus because I'm coming out of hiding to do it. So just as the enemy general saunters past, I'm slamming down with these Yariki right into the back of the regiment. That's going to take out a whole load of them. They are heavy cavalry who can hold out for a good while, but overall I'm going to win. The massive threat is that the enemy has turned some infantry to fire into my cavalry. To deal with this, I'm going to use my other cavalry unit as a distraction. What I want is to just keep that enemy regiment turning on the spot and not firing. So I need my other cavalry unit to run around as much as I can to do that. The enemy's fire rockets launch off a volley. It doesn't do much damage to my lines though, so it's not a big problem, and they're already going into the attack, so if they start volleying now, they're probably going to risk friendly fire, so I think they're probably going to stop using their artillery altogether. So they did not exploit their ranged advantage there. The enemy spear levy getting annihilated by my own spear levy. Here, the levy infantry who were firing at my cavalry are now going to be neutralized because I charge in my Kisho ninja to deal with them. I lose one ninja in the charge, but after this, I'm not going to lose a single man. These ninja are simply going to cut through these ranks of levy infantry, and the levies are going to be pretty demoralized by the sight of facing these famous shadow warriors, so they won't fight on for long. Meanwhile, the unit of cavalry who I had been using to distract those levy infantry has found another levy infantry unit to eat into and is now killing them pretty successfully. The middle of the enemy's line has folded because it's trying to engage with the spear levy that I've advanced on my left flank. So it's folding around, potentially risky because it could now fire into the flank of those levies. However, actually they were just very slowly going into melee. And this delay is helping me because I'm constantly shooting them with my matchlock militants from further up the hill and dampening their strength. On the right flank, I also managed to get my spear levy into melee, attacking these levy infantry who otherwise weren't doing very much at all. Now the cavalry who've defeated the levy infantry behind the enemy's main line are going to charge in and smash all of the enemy's front line from behind. Now they're pressed against my cavalry and my melee guys who are engaging them from the front. At this point I told my militants to stop firing because I was going to risk friendly fire pretty heavily, and just began a general advance to try and close all of the enemy's regiments down into melee. You can see some of the guys here are already retreating. Takahisa himself has come in with his cavalry to attack the enemy's levy infantry, getting some kills for himself in one of his first great battles. I'm also advancing my Yarikachi into the enemy's garrison infantry ranks, you can just about see it there, to slaughter them. And at this point, the enemy are starting a mass retreat. Well, their main line is at least. So they're going to get out of there, but I'm not going to chase them, because if I go any further to the west in the map, I'm going to come into range of the enemy's artillery. So I'm going to put my main army back into hiding and get my cavalry together. What I need to do now is do a mass charge right across the whole battlefield to go and eliminate the batteries of enemy artillery on the far west side. I've got my guys as spaced out as I can, and I'm rushing them at maximum speed. Here you can see the artillery. It's taking a while to load up and fire, but as I get a bit closer, they do start to actually unleash their rounds at my incoming cavalry. So in many ways I'm now just hoping that both these shots miss and that they don't hit Takahisa himself, who is among this group of cavalry. That would be quite a tragic loss. So they're just going to have to race as fast as they can. Some of the shots are coming down, I'm starting to take casualties. The shrapnel takes out the horses pretty easily. Luckily I'm pretty spaced out, so I'm not going to take many losses, only 1 or 2 per hit. Although of course having a wider formation like this means I'm going to get hit more often, so it's a little bit of swings and roundabouts. So I need to come over this ridge. The enemy's artillery is right behind it. The ridge is breaking line of sight, but they can still easily fire over the top. The shots are raining down. Luckily most of them are still missing. Now since I'm getting pretty close, I'm going to go within the enemy's minimum firing range, so they can't fire at me now that I'm super close to them, which means I'm now free to simply charge right at their artillery crews. The artillery crews are already pretty demoralized from the army losses, so when I come in, the majority of them start fleeing, and a whole bunch of them are cut down as they flee as well. So all the guns are abandoned, and the majority of my cavalry survived the charge. So that little charge of the light brigade style moment went okay. So a nice decisive victory for the Sioux forces. This means that the garrison inside Sayama is going to be extremely weak as a result of losing most of its men in this battle. So once we get back onto the strategy map, we'll probably be able to capture it right away, and we'll be seeing that in the next episode of Teppou Republic. So that's all for now. Things are looking pretty good for Sioux, and we'll see if that continues next time.